Snow was falling in those slow, heavy sheets. You only get in the Midwest, thick enough to blur the lights, quiet enough to make a man feel like he's walking into a memory he didn't ask to revisit. My boots hit the frozen gravel, and for a long second all I heard was my breath drifting out in front of me, white and unsteady in the dark. Greg's house sat at the end of the drive, warm lights burning behind the curtains, a little too bright for the hour. Too careful. The kind of glow people leave on when they want things to look better than they are. I stood there longer than I meant to, watching the shadows move just out of sight behind the glass. I'd come home for Christmas, nothing more. But the closer I got to that porch, the more the place felt wrong, like someone had shifted the furniture inside the life I thought I remembered. The air carried a tension I couldn't explain, a thin crackle that raised the hair on my arms, even through my coat. It was the feeling you get right before a storm breaks. Not loud, not violent, just certain. And when I finally stepped forward, I knew the night wasn't greeting me. It was warning me. The wind had quieted by the time I stepped out of the truck. Leaving the snowfall to drift in slow, heavy sheets across Greg's yard. The quiet felt almost staged, the kind of hush that settles over a place moments after something has been moved or hidden away. I stood there for a breath, letting the cold bite through my coat, and watched the porch light flicker once, as if deciding whether to stay on. A single set of footprints led from the driveway to the door, not quite matching the stride I remembered from my brother. I walked up slowly. The wooden steps groaned under my weight, familiar yet distant, like revisiting a childhood memory that no longer fits. Just as I reached the top, I caught a quick movement behind the living room curtain, a shadow. It slipped out of sight the second I blinked. Then the laughter inside cut off for half a beat, before returning again, lighter this time, almost forced. My hand hovered near the doorknob before I pulled it back and knocked. Warmth spilled out immediately when the door swung open. Cinnamon roasted meat, and the faint buzz of the space heater wrapped around me, carrying a softness I had not felt in years. Greg pulled me into a hug that felt too tight, his hand patting my back with a rhythm that didn't match the smile on his face. When he stepped away, I saw Linda behind him. She attempted a smile, but her eyes slid past me toward the hallway. She wiped her palms on her apron, even though they looked dry. The living room was exactly as I remembered. The mantel lined with stockings, the old couch with the sag in the middle where Dad used to sit, the Christmas lights blinking in uneven patterns along the banister. But the new family portrait above the fireplace caught my attention. Greg and Linda and the kids all in coordinated sweaters. No empty space on the edges. No sign that another person had ever belonged there. My hand tightened slightly on the strap of my bag. The heater clicked on again. The kids rushed toward me, asking about gifts and snow and Santa. Their joy made the room brighter, but a quiet weight sat underneath everything, like a conversation that had paused right before I arrived. Greg gestured toward the kitchen. He wanted to talk. His voice steady, but his eyes didn't hold on mine for long. The kitchen light hummed overhead, painting the counters in a pale glow. On the table sat a yellow envelope. Greg touched it with his fingertip, not quite sliding it forward yet. I saw his jaw tighten before he spoke, and the words landed flat. "We need to go over what Mom and Dad left behind." He looked not at me, but at the envelope, as if it might speak for him. I sat down. The chair legs scraped lightly across the tile. Greg pushed the envelope toward me, then stepped back, arms loosely crossed, but his shoulders held firm. I opened it. Papers slid out and unfolded across the table. My name appeared at the top in strokes that were close to mine, close enough to unsettle me, but wrong in ways I felt before I fully understood them. The date beneath it stilled something inside my chest. It was the week after Mom's funeral, the same night I had shared a drink with Greg and woken the next morning missing several hours. Greg said quietly that he only needed me to acknowledge it. His eyes flickered toward the living room before he looked back at me, as if checking whether anyone else could hear. The Christmas lights from the hallway cast a soft flicker across his face. For a moment he looked older than I remembered. The room seemed to pause. Even the heater fell silent. I glanced toward the doorway where Linda had been standing earlier, but she was gone now, leaving only the faint scent of something warming on the stove. The wall clock ticked once, sharp in the stillness. I felt the paper under my thumbs, smooth along the edges, worn in the center, where someone had handled it many times before this moment. I looked up at my brother. His expression held a calmness that did not belong to the holiday or to the man I grew up with. The distance between us felt real in a way it hadn't before. A quiet, heavy thing like a door that had already begun to close long before I stepped inside the house. I let out a slow breath. The lights blinked again in the next room, and the sound of the children laughing drifted faintly through the doorway, bright and far away. I folded the papers back into the envelope and set it on the table, my hand lingering there for a moment before I drew it away. The heater let out a soft, metallic click behind me, the kind that echoed faintly in the warm kitchen and settled somewhere low in my chest. I kept my hand over the envelope for a moment, feeling the heat rise from the vent beneath the cabinets. The house smelled of rosemary and turkey gravy, but beneath it was a quieter scent, something like old paper warmed by human hands. Greg stood a few feet away, the light from the overhead fixture giving his face a worn, uneven glow. His fingers tapped lightly on the counter, a restless rhythm he didn't usually have. I lifted the papers from the envelope and held them between my fingers. Greg moved closer. He spread the photocopy out flat on the counter, smoothing it once with the side of his palm. His finger hovered, then landed on the signature at the bottom. It curved just enough to resemble mine, but the slant was off, too tight, too controlled. I leaned in, letting my breath settle across the page. For someone who signed documents nearly every day, the wrongness hit me somewhere deep and instinctive. Greg watched me study it. His voice lowered as if he were explaining something delicate. You were exhausted after the funeral. It was a hard week. He spoke like he was reminding me of a story we'd both lived through, his tone soft enough that if I weren't paying attention it might have sounded caring. But I heard the careful pacing, the pauses chosen with precision. Without waiting for my response, he reached for his phone. The screen lit up, throwing a pale reflection across the silver faucet. He held it out to me. A grainy video played, showing me standing by a desk surrounded by papers. My coat was still on collar, turned up. The room around me looked familiar, but the shadows weren't right. They stretched from the wrong direction. The window reflection behind my shoulder didn't match the hour he claimed. I studied the clip, and something inside me tightened, a cold thread running down my spine. In the doorway, Linda appeared. She held a dish towel twisted into a tight knot, her knuckles white from the strain. She looked from Greg to me, then back again. Her lips parted slightly as if she wanted to say something, but she closed them just as quick. She stepped forward, but stopped short of the table, the towel hanging from her hand like a drawn breath that never quite released. Greg's voice drifted over the faint hum of the heater. After the divorce, you weren't in a good place. Mom and Dad asked me to step in. His words floated easily, but I caught the faint tremor in them, something he tried to bury under a practiced calm. I asked to see the original. The words left my mouth steady, but my hand drifted off the counter and tightened unconsciously near my side. Greg shook his head, almost too fast. "Your signature is enough." He said it gently, but the refusal landed like a quiet door shutting in the middle of a hallway. I studied the date under the signature. It sat there in clean print, a week after Mom's funeral. The night I lost time. The memory returned not as an image, but as a sensation. The heavy sweetness of the whiskey, the room tilting for a moment, the strange silence between us. My shoulders drew in slightly, and I pressed my thumb against the edge of the paper. It left a faint indentation, small but visible. The heater cycle ended, leaving a short, hollow silence. Through the doorway I could hear the kids arguing about stockings again, their voices full and bright, unbothered by anything happening on the other side of the house. A laugh broke out, high and quick. It stung a little, the kind of sound that reminds you how close innocence always sits to the edge of something complicated. Linda stepped further into the room. "Dinner will be ready soon." Her voice trembled on the last word. She set a plate near the sink and kept her eyes lowered, her movements too careful. When she turned away, her hand brushed the doorway frame, lingering there, as if she needed it to steady herself before walking off. Greg let out a breath, long and measured. He talked about responsibility again, about carrying the weight our parents left. I heard the words, but something in me had shifted. I found myself looking at the photocopy again. The edges had begun to curl slightly in the warmth of the kitchen. It looked worn, like it had been handled many times before tonight. I lifted my eyes and tried one question. "You're certain about that night?" My voice was low even, but the question hung between us with a weight neither of us could ignore. Greg's jaw flexed, barely noticeable, and he looked at the fridge instead of me. That small avoidance said more than anything he could have spoken. A memory surfaced quietly. The way he had poured the whiskey. The way he watched me drink. I drew in a slow breath, the cold from earlier still lingering somewhere under my ribs. I didn't push further. Not yet. The Christmas lights from the living room blinked against the hallway wall. Their reflections flickered across the photocopy, giving the signature a momentary shimmer before the lights dimmed again. That faint pulse of color felt like a warning, or maybe just the house shifting under the weight of too many things unsaid. I folded the pages back into the envelope and set it on the counter. My hand stayed there longer than it should have, the warmth of the tile slowly seeping into my palm. For a moment, everything was still. No voices, no heater, only the soft buzz of the light overhead and the distant rattle of a window being touched by the wind. Something was wrong here. Wrong in a way that wasn't born tonight. Wrong in a way that had roots stretching back further than I had realized. When I looked over at Greg, he was already watching me. His expression held no anger, no guilt, only a tight control, like a man guarding a truth too fragile to let slip. The clock on the wall ticked once, sharp and empty. I felt that sound settle somewhere deep, and the room seemed to hold its breath with me. Silent night drifted through the living room, the notes soft and thin, carrying more weight than warmth. The first few bars slipped around the furniture and settled in the corners like dust. I stopped just past the doorway, letting the sound reach me before I stepped closer. Something about the melody felt uneven tonight, as if one of the speakers wasn't working, or the room itself was pushing back against the music. The tree lights reflected in the window, but the reflections didn't quite line up with the bulbs shifting slightly each time the lights blinked. I stood still and let the room shape itself around me. The couch where Dad used to nap after Christmas dinner, the empty armchair by the fireplace where Mom kept a throw blanket folded year after year, a scent of pine mixed with chamomile, and something faintly metallic from the radiator. My hand rested on the back of the armchair, without thinking the fabric cool under my palm. In the reflection on the window, I saw my own outlined shoulders tense, breath shallow. Behind that outline, the shadows from the tree lights wavered in a way that didn't match the bulbs. I stepped closer to the mantel and stared at the new family photo. The frame glowed under the strand of lights, but something in the composition felt off. Not a missing space or a gap, nothing that intentional, just a slight imbalance in how the group stood. A tilt that left the right side of the frame feeling lighter than the left, as if a person had stepped out moments before the shutter clicked. It pulled at me more than I wanted to admit. A soft clatter sounded from the dining room. I turned as Linda entered with a tray of tea. The cups rattled gently, and she steadied them with a shaky breath. When she handed one to me, a thin ribbon of steam curled around her wrist. Her hand trembled, and a drop of tea slipped down the side of the cup before she pulled away. She said quietly that it was all for the family. Her voice threaded through the music, barely rising above it. The way she said it felt more like an apology than a belief. Before I could answer, she stepped back toward the kitchen, her hand brushing the doorway frame, as if she needed the contact to steady herself. I sat on the couch, the tea warm between my hands. The steam blurred the edges of the room for a second, and in that blur a memory rose without warning. Mom in her hospital bed, the thin cotton sheets pulled to her waist, her hand reaching for mine, trembling in a way that made me afraid to hold on too tightly. She tried to tell me something. I leaned in, waiting. She shook her head and closed her eyes as if the truth would break us if it ever found its way into the room. That was the last time she tried to warn me of anything. I lifted the cup and took a sip. Chamomile. Mom's favorite. The taste settled on my tongue and brought back another memory from the night after her funeral. Greg handing me a glass of whiskey. The good bottle, the one he never opened unless Dad was around. I remembered the burn of the first sip. I remembered the room tilting slightly. Then nothing. 3 lost hours. Not the muddled blur of grief, not the heaviness of a drink hitting too fast, but a clean, solid block of time missing like a chapter torn from a book. I set the cup down the saucer, giving a muted ring as porcelain met wood. The kids were in the corner building something with blocks, their voices bright and unbroken. One of them looked up and handed me a spare piece, smiling, before turning back to his tower. Moments like that used to ground me. Tonight it only reminded me how easily children lived in the truth of the moment, while adults hid pieces of theirs. I walked toward the kitchen doorway. The lights flickered along the hallway wall, the colors shifting in uneven pulses. From where I stood, I saw Greg leaning over the counter again, the photocopy in his hands. He ran his thumb across the edge slowly, as if tracing a groove he had worn into the paper over time. The light above him flashed once, and he glanced up at it before pretending he hadn't. I stepped in slowly. When I asked him about the night of the recording, he answered quickly, too quickly, repeating what he had said earlier. I let a beat of silence fall between us, then mentioned the clock in the background, the one almost an hour off. That was when I saw it, a small tightening at the corner of his mouth, a shift in his eyes before he blinked it away. He said clocks go wrong all the time. His voice stayed level, but his fingers pressed into the photocopy with more force. I didn't push him. Not yet. Instead, I let my hand rest on the edge of the counter, fingertips brushing a faint scratch on the wood I hadn't seen before. It ran in a straight line, too deep to be accidental. I followed it with my thumb, feeling its sharpness. Greg watched me trace it. He didn't ask what I was doing. A faint whisper of wind pushed against the front door. It rattled just enough to catch my attention. That sound wasn't there before. I moved toward the hallway, passing the framed photos, the stockings, the decorations Mom used to insist we hang even when we were grown. The front window reflected the tree lights in fractured patterns. Linda stood near the tree again. Her hand rested on the back of Dad's old armchair, fingers curled slightly over the edge. She wasn't looking at the decorations or the kids or the tea tray. She was looking at Greg. Her face was still, but her eyes told a story she wasn't ready to speak. I stepped past her and reached for my coat. The cold met me immediately when I opened the front door. Snow fell in to quiet the breath I didn't know I had been holding. I walked onto the porch and let the cold settle along my shoulders, the air sharp against my throat. The house behind me glowed warm and golden, the kind of glow that should have brought comfort. But tonight, it only cast longer shadows. I took a few steps down the driveway. The snow cracked softly beneath my boots. I turned back once. Through the window, I saw movement shapes shifting behind the tree light. The music wavered for a moment, as if someone had brushed against the speaker. A part of my life had slipped out of place long before tonight. I could feel it now, sharper than the cold air on my skin. And inside that warm house, I was starting to understand that everyone else had known it before I did. The cold followed me into the car, before the door shut, fully slipping across the seats and collecting in the corners. For a moment I just sat there, listening to the faint ticking of the cooling engine. A pair of headlights swept across the windshield as another car passed the house, the beam washing over the dashboard and fading just as quickly. Only then did I reach for the envelope on the passenger seat. The dome light hummed. When I switched it on, its weak glow settling over the paper like a thin layer of warmth fighting against the cold. I flattened the agreement across my knee. The ink looked uneven under the soft yellow light. Small smudges near the edge caught my attention, first trailing in a pattern that reminded me of the old printer Greg kept in his office. I had filled out paperwork there enough times to know its quirks, the way the toner skipped in thin dotted lines, the faint drag mark whenever the feeder pulled paper slightly off-center. I brushed a finger across one smudge, then wiped my hand on my jeans, not sure why the motion felt like brushing away something more permanent. My eyes traveled down the page to the notary stamp. The name struck me like a tap against the ribs. Harold Benson. Memories shifted. A fallen porch beam after a windstorm. A quiet old man who apologized for not having coffee to offer when I visited to document the damage. And the obituary that followed only a week later. He had been gone long before this agreement was supposedly signed. I let out a slow breath, watching the fog of it blur in the air before disappearing. The cabin felt tighter now, the air pressing in. I turned the page over and saw it. The handwriting I had tried to remember since her funeral. Mom's hand weaker than it had been even a year earlier, but still hers. Greg, please don't. The line ended there, the last stroke trailing off as if her hand had trembled, or someone had gently taken the pen away. My thumb hovered just above the words, not touching the ink, only tracing the shape of the sentence in the air. A warmth climbed into my chest, the kind that carried both tenderness and something close to fear. I closed my eyes for a moment. The inside of the car felt too quiet, like the world outside had stopped to let me sit with that unfinished plea. When I opened them, A small print code near the corner of the page caught the light. A string of tiny numbers and letters barely noticeable unless you'd trained yourself to look for the smallest inconsistencies. I brought the page closer. The code matched the same format I had seen on property sheets from Greg's office, the kind only that machine used. The air inside the car felt heavier after that. Facts arranged themselves without my permission, each one landing with a weight that made my pulse tighten at the neck. My phone was cold against my palm when I lifted it. I hesitated before calling Alan Pierce. He answered with the steady voice he'd had since the first time he handled a will for our family. I told him something was wrong. He took a breath before replying. "Come in the morning," he said. Some conversations shouldn't travel on holiday phone lines. The way he said it made the space inside the car feel even smaller. I ended the call and leaned back in the seat. A gust of wind pushed against the car, rocking it gently. Snow swept across the windshield, catching the streetlight in brief flashes. The heater finally pushed out a warm stream of air, fogging the space near the vents. I folded the document slowly, pressing along the crease with my thumb. A faint streak of toner marked the side of my hand. I rubbed it away, but it left a light shadow. I stared at it longer than I meant to. I started the engine. The hum rose through the steering wheel, steadying my hands. When I backed out of the driveway, Greg's house slipped into the edge of the mirror. The windows glowed with the soft light of a family settling in for the night, but something in the arrangement felt wrong. One room at the back stayed lit, even as the rest of the house dimmed a single square of yellow cutting through the dark. I couldn't see who was inside, but the sight held my attention until the turn of the wheel pulled the house out of view. The road ahead was lined with homes dressed in Christmas lights, strands of red and green looping across roofs and fences. A plastic snowman faced the street with a smile that had begun to fade in the cold. I drove slowly, the tires moving through the thin layer of fresh snow, each rotation sending a soft crunch up through the car. The glow of the street lamps passed over me in intervals, warming the cabin for a moment before letting the cold reclaim it. A memory of Mom's voice rose again, faint as a whisper through a cracked door. She had tried to tell me something, her fingers tightening around mine, her eyes searching my face for understanding. I remembered brushing her hand gently, telling her to rest. I remembered her trying again, and me telling her we'd talk when she felt stronger. It wasn't until now, with her handwriting fading into the crease of the folded page, that I realized she had been racing against time. The farther I drove, the more the night opened around me. The houses thinned out, the lights grew sparse, and the snow fell steadier. The road stretched into a quiet line beneath the dark sky. Inside the car, the envelope lay on the seat beside me, the weight of it impossible to ignore. I kept my eyes on the road, but the words "Greg, please don't" stayed pressed against the back of my mind. Christmas had always been a pause in our family, a moment where we pretended the year's wounds were shallow. But tonight, the quiet only made them louder. And with each mile I put between myself and that house, the truth sharpened in a way that told me this wound had been waiting for years to be opened. The living room felt warmer than it should have when I stepped inside, as if the fire had been burning too long. Greg crouched in front of the hearth, stirring the logs with the metal poker, sending a scatter of sparks upward. He didn't look back at me. The quiet in the room felt heavy, held together by the faint crackle of wood and the hum of the furnace. I walked toward him, passing the framed picture of Mom and Dad on the side table, the one with the small scratch across Dad's cheek. It caught the light as I went by a thin silver line that made me stop for a breath before continuing. The smell of baked ham drifted from the kitchen, soft and familiar, but it did nothing to steady me. Greg put the poker down and finally stood. He brushed his hands on his jeans, a motion that looked too deliberate. He said something about the fire burning unevenly, his eyes still fixed on the flames. I set the folder of documents on the coffee table close enough for him to see it, but far enough so he would have to come to it. For a moment, neither of us moved. I told him I had looked closer at the notary stamp, the print code, the mismatched dates. My voice stayed level low, the way you talk when you want the truth more than the fight. Greg's jaw flexed, then relaxed again, like he was rehearsing what to feel. He took one step toward the table, but stopped short, choosing instead to stare at the tree lights reflecting against the window. He let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. I heard him say something about the holidays already being hard on the kids. His tone was softer than the words. He finally bent down to pick up the papers, holding them only by the corners, as if they might burn him. For a few seconds, he read without speaking. Then he placed them back and asked if I planned to turn Christmas into a courtroom. Before I answered, a soft noise came from the stairs. I looked up and found Linda standing halfway down, her hand gripping the railing. The glow from the hallway light hit her face unevenly, showing the red just beneath her eyes. She didn't speak. She just watched, waiting for one of us to say something that couldn't be unsaid. I asked Greg again what happened that night, the one I still couldn't remember. This time my voice came out quieter than before. The question hung in the air longer than I expected. Greg shifted his weight, staring into the fire, as if the answer were hidden somewhere in the embers. His mouth opened slightly, then closed. There was a pause, the kind that fills a room even when no one moves. He finally whispered that if I hadn't disappeared, none of this would have happened. It was barely audible, but Linda heard it. Her head jerked toward him, a quick snap of motion that broke whatever balance the room had been holding. She took a step down, then stopped, her hand tightening on the banister. The expression on her face wasn't anger. It was fear, sharp and sudden, like she had just witnessed a line she hoped would never be crossed. Greg realized what he had said. He rubbed the back of his neck, eyes dropping to the carpet. He tried to change the subject, muttering something about the day being long and the kids not needing more tension. His voice wavered slightly at the edges. He still didn't look at me. I waited for him to explain, to backtrack, to tell me what he meant. But he stayed still, the firelight flickering across his face, painting shadows under his eyes that made him look older than I remembered. The room settled into an uneasy quiet. Even the furnace seemed to hum more softly, as if it didn't want to draw attention. From the top of the stairs, a child's voice called for Linda. She pulled in a quick breath, wiped under her eyes with her thumb, and backed up the steps without taking her gaze off Greg. When she reached the hallway above, she lingered for a second, then disappeared around the corner. I stood alone with him. The silence stretched until it felt like a third person in the room. Someone standing between us, someone who knew the truth. Neither of us was ready to speak. The fire popped, sending a spark against the grate. Greg flinched slightly. That tiny reaction told me more than anything he had said all afternoon. I picked up the folder. My hand brushed the edge of the table, leaving a faint smudge where the heat from my palm met the cool wood. I told him I would figure this out with or without his help. He didn't stop me. He didn't ask me to stay. He only watched the fire again, the way people look at something they hope will erase a memory. When I stepped outside, the cold hit me harder than before, sharp enough to wake something inside my chest. The snow had started falling again, light and steady. As I walked toward my car, I felt the weight of eyes on me from somewhere behind the curtains. Maybe Linda, maybe one of the kids, or maybe a shadow, I imagined, because the truth was finally moving. I opened the car door, letting the dome light spill over the seat. For a few seconds, I stayed there listening to the muffled sounds from inside the house. A door closed somewhere deep in the hallway. Then another. The kind of sounds that tell you conversations are happening in rooms you are no longer welcome in. The snow touched the windshield in slow, soft taps. I set the folder beside me and looked back at the house one last time before starting the engine. The lights flickered faintly behind the curtains, warm and gentle, but something in the stillness felt wrong, like the calm that settles just before a storm knows exactly where to land. I drove away with the certainty that Greg remembered everything I couldn't, and whatever happened in those missing hours was close enough now to touch. The door to Alan's office closed behind me with a soft click, shutting out the wind that had chased me all the way from the parking lot. Snowflakes still clung to my coat, melting into dark spots along the sleeves. The warmth inside rose slowly against my skin, carrying the familiar blend of old books and pipe tobacco that had lived in this office longer than I had been alive. It was the same scent that used to follow my father out to the car when he brought me here as a boy, the same steady calm he carried whenever he had something important to take care of. Alan stood from his desk. His greeting was quiet, almost careful, as if he could read the tension I was still carrying from the moment I had stepped out of Greg's house. He motioned toward the same leather chair I used to sit in while Dad signed documents across from him. I took the seat, my hands resting on my knees for a moment, before I placed the folder on the desk. He opened it again, though I knew he had already examined every page the night before. The curve of his brow deepened as he looked over the forged signature, the stamp, the mismatched date. He tapped his thumb lightly along the margin, a habit I remembered from years ago when he used to review my father's contracts line by line. He finally closed the folder and folded his hands, letting out a slow breath. He said my parents never spoke of any family agreement, especially not one involving property or control. The way he said it stopped something inside my chest. He went on explaining that my father always handled his affairs directly, never through hidden documents. It was the kind of statement that left no room for argument, and for a moment I felt the weight of that certainty more than the cold I had brought in. He stood and walked to the safe in the corner. The sound of the dial turning echoed in the quiet room, each click pulling me further into a place I wasn't sure I was ready to revisit. When he opened the safe, a soft beam of cool light reflected off the metal door, brushing across his face and catching the fatigue in his eyes. He reached into the back and brought out a small envelope, yellowed and slightly wrinkled, as though it had been opened and closed many times before being tucked away. He set it gently in my hands. My father's handwriting met me like a jolt, the heavy downstrokes and slight slant I had seen on every birthday card he ever wrote me. The words were few, but carried a gravity that steadied and broke me at the same time. If something happens, do not let Greg manage the estate. My fingers tightened around the paper. I felt a pulse of heat rise through my chest, followed by the sting of something I hadn't felt in years, something close to regret. I asked Alan quietly when my father had written it. He sat back down, his chair settling into the floor with a soft thump. He explained that in the months before Mom passed, my father had taken him aside during a routine meeting. My father said he had concerns about Greg, concerns about the way money was moving, concerns about people my father described only as lenders who did not care whether you paid them back or not. That phrase hung in the air like a shadow. I thought of Nevada, of Greg's trips that never quite added up, and of the week he stayed with Mom when she was too weak to notice the sound of drawers opening in her home office. Alan said my father had changed the locks around that time. I remembered the call he made telling me about it, how he brushed it off as nothing important. Back then, I believed him. Now the memory cut deeper. He told me he had once requested access to my father's medical records after his sudden passing. He had hoped to understand something that didn't sit right with him. The request had been blocked. He didn't know by whom, but he knew it wasn't the hospital. The implication drifted between us unspoken, but sharp enough to leave an ache in my jaw as I clenched it. I rested the envelope on my knee, unable to let it go entirely. A memory slipped in uninvited. I was 16, arguing with Dad about a summer job I didn't want. His voice was firm but tired, asking me to take responsibility for something that wasn't pleasant, but was necessary. There had been love behind the frustration, the kind that feels heavier years later, when you realize how much a man tries to teach without saying the words directly. Sitting here now, I felt the echo of that moment, and for the first time, I wondered how many lessons I had missed while trying to keep the peace. Outside the window, a gust of wind rattled the loose edge of the awning, a small reminder that the storm still lingered over the town. The noise broke the quiet, and Alan stood to walk me to the door. His face held a sympathy that made the room feel smaller, as though he had been waiting for this day longer than I had known. He said this was no longer a matter of a forged document. Something deeper had been hidden, something that started long before Christmas, and had been waiting for the wrong moment to surface. I nodded, though the words felt heavier than my breath could carry. When I stepped outside, the cold struck me again, sharper now, almost purposeful. Snow drifted across the road in slow spirals, gathering on the hood of my car. I paused before opening the door, noticing a dark SUV parked across the street. The engine was off. The windows were tinted. I couldn't see inside. After a few seconds, the SUV pulled away without signaling its tires whispering through the slush. I got into the car and set the envelope on the seat beside me next to the folder of forged pages. The dome light flickered once, then steadied, casting a pale glow over the dashboard. For a moment I watched the light tremble across the surface of the envelope, my father's handwriting catching the glow like a quiet warning. When I finally drove off, the snow softened against the windshield, but the truth in that envelope felt harder than anything the winter could lay across the road. Something in my father's last message was pointing me somewhere, and for the first time I knew I had to follow it no matter what waited in the dark ahead. The heater in Alan's office clicked on with a dull thump, as the winter wind pushed against the old window panes. I stood beside his desk, watching the papers he had spread out the edges lifting slightly each time the warm air cycled through the room. The glow from the small wreath lamp on the filing cabinet cast a soft green ring across the documents, giving everything an off-kilter holiday tint. It felt strange standing there Christmas week, unraveling the parts of my family that were supposed to be solid. Alan tapped the first bank statement with the tip of his finger. The movements were slow and deliberate, the way my father used to handle important mail at the kitchen table. Several transfers had moved from Dad's IRAs and trust accounts to an LLC registered in Nevada, all during a window when my parents were dealing with hospital visits and decisions no family wants to make in December. I kept my hands in my pockets to keep them steady, though my heart pressed hard against my ribs. I asked how he got the records so quickly. He leaned back, the leather creaking, explaining that some of the information had been requested months ago during routine trust audits, long before any of this started. He had just never imagined needing to interpret them through a darker lens. That explanation helped grounding the moment in something procedural, something real. Not a sudden twist the way my mind had feared. When he slid over the next folder, I felt my stomach tighten. It held loan documents taken under Dad's identity, all dated during the weeks when Greg's real estate ventures were starting to collapse. The amounts were large, spaced in a rhythm that spoke of someone grabbing for lifelines as fast as they could be processed. It was the kind of financial pattern I had seen in claims investigations more times than I wanted to remember. I pressed a thumb against my temple, trying to slow the thoughts racing ahead of the facts. There was a brief pause as Alan sorted through additional printouts, his hands shaking just enough to show his age, or maybe his disappointment. Then he placed the hotel record between us. The paper made a light snapping sound on the wood. I saw 2 names tied to a Las Vegas reservation from a few years back, and one of them was Caroline. My ex-wife had left the reservation early, but Greg stayed behind. The heater hummed louder in the background, as if trying to swallow the silence settling over the room. I told Alan I needed a moment, and I stepped toward the window. Outside, snow fell in thick, slow flakes, drifting over the parking lot in a way that made everything look muted and distant. I thought about the look Caroline wore during the divorce, that mixture of regret and caution, something I had pushed aside at the time because I was too tired to decode it. Now, it felt sharper than the cold pressing against the glass. When I returned to the desk, Alan added another piece of the story. During Mom's final weeks, Greg had full access to Dad's home office. He had been the one handling bills, sorting mail, even contacting insurance when things became complicated. Dad had trusted him because he was physically present while I was states away trying to hold my own life together. The reminder sat heavy on my shoulders, pulling me back to all the times I had told myself to be patient with Greg, to give him the benefit of the doubt, because it was Christmas, because he was family. I asked Alan if Dad had ever mentioned concerns about Greg before. He hesitated, then said that Dad had been worried about certain financial circles Greg had drifted into, especially those tied to Nevada. Dad had never offered specifics, but he had left warnings in quiet comments and half-finished sentences. Hearing that now against the backdrop of these documents made my chest ache in a way that wasn't just grief. It was the feeling of being too late to protect someone who had tried to protect me. A gust of wind rattled the window. The wreath lamp flickered. The whole office seemed to breathe in with me. Alan's voice lowered when he pointed out the print codes in the corners of the scanned forms. They matched Greg's office printer, the same model identified earlier in the notary discrepancy. It was one more thread tying everything together, one more piece in a picture that no longer allowed for innocence or misunderstanding. I told Alan about the safe in Greg's house, about Linda's quiet fear on the staircase, about the slip in Greg's voice when I asked about the 3 missing hours. Each detail sounded heavier spoken aloud, like the room itself gave weight to the parts I had been trying to hold without fully acknowledging. Alan listened without interrupting his jaw set the way someone does when they've seen families fall apart in ways that no holiday can soften. He asked me what I thought Greg was hiding. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I picked up a photograph on Alan's desk, a simple frame showing his children years younger, smiling under Christmas lights. My hand tightened around the edges as a memory surfaced of Dad adjusting a strand of lights on our porch, telling me that families survive because someone keeps watch when the others can't. I set the photograph down slowly. When I finally spoke, the words came out low. Whatever Greg is afraid of isn't in these files. It's somewhere else. Either in Nevada or in that safe he keeps locked away from everyone. And he is getting desperate. Alan nodded, not surprised, but deeply troubled. He told me we had enough information to dig deeper, maybe far deeper than Greg wanted us to. There were still missing pieces, though. Pieces that might change everything depending on who placed them where and why. He suggested we return after the holiday to continue, but his expression said he knew the clock was already running. I gathered the papers carefully and tucked them into my coat. The snow outside had thickened, turning the parking lot lights into hazy orbs. When I stepped out into the cold, the air struck my face with a sharpness that felt almost cleansing. I paused beside my truck, the envelope from my father still tucked inside my inner pocket. I could feel the slight bend of it as I breathed. The truth was shifting again, settling into a shape I wasn't sure I was ready to face. And as I stood in the falling snow, I knew the next part of this story would not be found in bank statements. It would be found in whatever Greg had been protecting all these years, buried in a place only he believed was safe. The wind pressed against my coat, and for a long moment I let the silence close in before I finally opened the truck door. The cafe door swung shut behind me, letting the winter air settle off my shoulders as I stepped inside. A string of warm bulbs glowed along the ceiling, and the faint scent of cinnamon and burnt espresso drifted through the air. Holiday music played low from a worn speaker near the counter, the kind of tune people hardly noticed, but somehow always recognized. I paused long enough for my eyes to adjust before I saw her at the window standing halfway up from her seat, as if she had been about to leave and changed her mind at the last second. Caroline froze when she saw me, her hands tightening around the strap of her purse. She sat back down, slowly smoothing the edge of her scarf, as though trying to regain her composure. I could tell she had rehearsed this moment, but the way her breath hitched said nothing could prepare her for it. I walked to the table and took the seat across from her. The space between us felt like a long, unfinished sentence. She started talking before I could say anything. Her voice was soft, uneven, as if each word reminded her of something she wished she had done differently. She said Linda told her I had questions, and she wasn't sure how much she should say. She looked away when she spoke, watching snow slide along the window pane in slow, melting trails. I waited, letting her take her time. Silence often told me more than any confession could. When she finally looked at me directly, the moment held. She admitted that after Mom's funeral, Greg had approached her with a request. He wanted her to write a statement saying I was unstable, that I was grieving badly, that I couldn't be trusted with legal matters. She said she refused. Her fingers trembled when she said the word refused, though not from fear, but from regret. She whispered that she should have told me sooner, should have warned me, but she was afraid of getting pulled deeper into a family conflict that was never hers to fix. I told her I understood. Her eyes softened, but the guilt didn't leave. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. She hesitated before pressing play, her thumb resting on the screen, as if she were holding on to something fragile. Then a familiar voice filled the small cafe booth. My mother's voice. Tired, but steady. She said she was worried about the family. Worried about Greg. Worried that pressure might push him toward something he couldn't take back. Her words broke off mid-thought, leaving a space that carried more fear than anything she might have said next. Hearing her voice again made my chest tighten in a way I wasn't prepared for. I tried to breathe, but the sound stuck somewhere in my throat. Caroline watched me, her gaze firm but sympathetic. She said Mom had sent the recording to her because she didn't want to burden me while I handled funeral arrangements. She thought Caroline would know how to reach me if things got worse. That simple detail, that small vote of trust from my mother, landed harder than anything else I had heard that day. Caroline leaned closer, lowering her voice. She said Greg kept something in the home safe, something he guarded more fiercely than anything else. It wasn't money. She was sure of that. She said it was something tied to my parents, maybe a document from Dad's office or something Mom refused to sign. She remembered Greg panicking once when one of the kids got too close to the safe. She didn't know what was inside, only that whatever it was, he feared losing it. She told me she had tried to reach Dad weeks before he passed. She had left messages, called the office, even tried to stop by the house, but never made it in time. Her voice trembled as she said it. I could tell that part haunted her, and she carried it alone because she believed no one wanted to hear it after the divorce. I said nothing, but something in her face eased, as if she had needed that silence from me. A waitress walked past our table, refilling cups and humming along to the Christmas song overhead. The noise of clinking dishes and soft conversations filled the spaces between us, grounding the moment in a reality that felt both ordinary and unbearably heavy. Caroline said she didn't want to choose sides, but she couldn't watch Greg pull the family apart. She said she hoped I found whatever truth my parents tried to leave behind. Then she added 3 words that lingered long after she said them. Be careful, Alex. The way she said careful carried a warning I couldn't ignore. I stood to leave. As I buttoned my coat, Caroline opened her mouth as if she were about to say something else. But the moment passed, and she closed it again, lowering her eyes to the table. I waited a beat, hoping she'd finish the thought, but she didn't. Sometimes the things left unsaid weigh more than the ones spoken. Outside, the sky had darkened. Snow fell thicker now, the kind that blurred streetlights and softened edges of buildings. I walked to my car with the recording echoing in my mind, my mother's voice stopping mid-sentence, carrying a truth she never had the chance to finish. I sat in the driver's seat for a long moment, the engine silent, the world muffled by the storm pressing against the windows. As I finally started the car, the dashboard lights flickered on and cast a dim glow across the interior. In that reflection, I saw something familiar in my own face, a shadow of my father in the lines around my eyes. I pulled onto the snowy road with the feeling that every mile ahead was leading me closer to the secret my parents had tried to protect, the one Greg had buried, the one still waiting inside that safe. A sharp knock at the door woke me before the sun had a chance to reach the windows. The house was cold, the kind of morning chill that settles in when the furnace cycles off, and for a moment I just stood there listening to it breathe. The knock came again, softer this time, as if whoever delivered the envelope wanted distance from whatever was inside it. I picked it up from the porch, the snow melting along its edges, and carried it to the kitchen, where the only light came from the Christmas tree, blinking weakly in the next room. The petition sat heavy in my hands. I scanned it under the quiet hum of the refrigerator, feeling a current of disbelief pulse through me. Greg's claim said I was unfit to contest the estate, his words barely disguised as concern. My fingers tightened around the paper. The language was too formal, too polished, the work of someone who had planned this long before Christmas. I set the documents on the table and played the attached video on my laptop. The screen washed my face in a pale glow as I watched a version of myself stitched together from different nights. The shadows changed shape between frames, the background lights shifted small glitches only someone who spent years reviewing fraudulent claims would notice. I paused the video and leaned back, listening to the faint buzz of the heater as it struggled against the cold. Something in my chest tightened, not anger exactly, but a quiet sense of being pushed out of my own history. I rewound the clip and checked the metadata, noticing the mismatched timestamps and the way 3 separate files had been merged. It was enough to request an independent review, but the reality of having to defend my own sanity in the middle of December pressed down harder than any legal burden. A car passed outside its tires, hissing on the snow. I looked toward the living room where Mom's old ornament hung crooked on a branch, catching a glint of morning light. For a moment I let myself breathe into that memory, letting the edges soften until my phone buzzed sharply against the table. The sound cut the silence in half. I opened the message, and saw Linda's name. Her words appeared in fragments as if she typed them quickly while watching over her shoulder. "He is not the man I married. Safe code is 0815. My breath caught. I read it again slower this time, feeling the weight of every letter. Behind her message, I imagined her standing in the hallway of their home, the children asleep, the railing cold beneath her hands. Whatever fear she carried had finally outweighed her loyalty. For a moment I looked toward the window and watched snow drift from the roof, settling onto the driveway like a slow collapse. I wondered how long Greg had been rewriting the story, how many people he had convinced that I was the unstable one. There was a sting beneath the anger I could not quite name, a hurt that reached back through the years when we were boys in this same town, sharing the same rooms, the same parents, the same holidays. I gathered the petition and the laptop and stepped into the living room, sitting in Dad's old recliner. The fabric held a faint smell of cedar and thyme, a scent I had grown up with. I let myself sink into it, feeling the strain in my shoulders settle. The tree lights flickered gently, one bulb blinking out, and then back in, as if hesitating to stay lit. The moment was still, but under it ran a steady current, quiet and electric. My phone vibrated again. Alan's name appeared. I answered it without moving from the chair. He spoke carefully, his voice low, a tone I recognized from the rare moments in his office when he had to deliver news that shifted the ground beneath a family. "We have a new witness," he said. "This changes everything." The line went silent for a breath before he added that we should meet soon. No details, no context, just that voice carrying something between warning and promise. When he hung up, the room felt heavier, as if the house had taken in the words and held them too. I looked toward the tree once more, its lights reflecting faintly off the ornaments Mom used to polish every December. The blinking bulb steadied glowing without interruption for the first time all morning. I watched it until the quiet settled again, deep and unmoving, and felt the sense that whatever waited ahead would no longer be just about paperwork or signatures. Somewhere in the layers of this holiday season, under the snow and the silence, something long buried was beginning to surface. And as the house held its breath, I knew the truth that had eluded me for years was now only inches away, close enough that I could almost feel it stirring in the room with me. The wind pressed against the car as I sat in the driveway watching flakes of snow drift across the hood, like dust on an old photograph. For a long moment I stayed there, with the engine ticking softly, letting the quiet settle around me. After the call from Alan, something in my chest felt unsteady, as if the ground beneath this whole holiday had shifted again. When I finally stepped out, the cold bit hard enough to wake every thought I had tried to push aside. Samira opened her door before I reached the porch. She stood in her work boots, arms folded, eyes uneasy. Her voice dropped when she said she didn't want neighbors listening. She told me she had seen Greg carrying a heavy box from Dad's house into his car right after Mom's funeral, the night everyone thought he was inside helping. She described the way he kept looking over his shoulder, like a man moving something he knew he shouldn't. When she finished, her hands were trembling. She said she had held this in for months, afraid of taking sides, but the freeze order announced on the local news pushed her to speak now. As she closed the door, I heard a muffled sob, and knew the truth had scared her as much as it scared me. Alan and I met near the courthouse, the old brick building glowing under cold winter light. Inside, the corridors were quiet, except for the hum of the heater and the occasional echo of a closing door. Rachel Turner waited at the end of the hall, her father's worn journal held tight against her chest. When she handed it to me, her fingers lingered on the edge, as if letting go took effort. She said she had recognized Greg's name in the estate freeze order and remembered the way her father looked the day he stamped that document too weak to sit up straight. She told me her father had whispered about being pressured about a man who wouldn't take no for an answer. In the journal, the shaky handwriting formed a single line that felt heavy enough to carry the weight of a verdict. G pushed for the stamp, even though I could barely hold the seal. I stared at the words until they blurred. Alan read over my shoulder, without speaking. For a moment, the hallway seemed to narrow around us. Then he took the journal, walked straight into the clerk's office, and filed it with the rest of the evidence. When he returned, he said the judge would likely authorize an extended hold on all estate activity. His voice was steady, but the way he exhaled told me he understood what this meant for my family. Back in the cold outside, I walked toward Mom's old sedan parked behind the courthouse. I still hadn't figured out why I felt drawn to it, but something about the conversation inside pulled me toward that car, the last space she had moved through. The door creaked when I opened it, releasing a faint scent of her perfume mixed with old heater dust. I checked the glove compartment, finding nothing more than expired insurance slips, then reached under the seat. My fingers hit paper. It was a torn memo. The edges jagged the ink faint from time. Only the first part of the sentence survived. If this reaches Alex. The silence inside the car tightened around me. I pressed the paper against my leg, imagining the rest of that line, imagining Dad writing it with urgency, knowing something was slipping out of his control. For the first time in this whole ordeal, my hand shook. I had to sit back and steady my breathing before I could bring myself to fold the fragment carefully into my pocket. Losing Mom and Dad had been hard enough, but understanding that their last attempts to protect me had been interrupted by someone they trusted made the grief cut in a new way. When I stepped out into the parking lot, my phone buzzed. A message from Linda lit the screen. Greg is losing control. He keeps going back to the safe. Whatever is in there scares him more than anything else. Be careful. The words felt like fresh ice cracking underfoot. Linda had crossed a line by reaching out again, one that could put her directly against her husband. It meant she believed the danger was real enough to risk whatever came next. Her courage made my chest tighten with something close to guilt and gratitude. At the sheriff's office, Deputy Brooks met me near the bulletin board where holiday notices hung crookedly. The room smelled of coffee that had been reheated too many times. He spoke quietly, as if the walls themselves were listening. He said the evidence was stacking faster than expected. Between Samira's statement, the journal, and the financial reports, there was now strong justification for a full warrant once the courts reopened after the holiday recess. He paused before he said more, studying my face with a kind of sympathy that men in uniform rarely show. Then he told me that cases like this often turned dangerous, not because of crime, but because of family. People in pain acted in unpredictable ways. He wanted me to keep my distance from Greg until the warrant was in hand. Driving home, the sky had darkened into a heavy blue, the kind that made the Christmas lights along the neighborhood porches glow against the snow. For the first time in days, I felt the shape of the truth forming. Not whole, not yet, but close enough that its edges cut whenever I reached for it. Every witness, every torn page, every shaky signature pointed toward the same place. I pulled into my driveway and sat with the engine off, letting the silence fill the cabin. The note from Dad was still in my pocket, its torn edge pressing lightly against my leg. I touched it once, then let my hand fall away. Inside the house, the Christmas tree lights flickered soft and wavering as if unsure how long they could keep burning. We were close to uncovering everything, close enough that the truth no longer felt like something buried. It felt alive, pushing up through the cold, ready to break the surface in a way that would change all of us. December 26th came in with a wind that felt like it had teeth. The sky was the color of steel, low and heavy over the town, and the snow that had looked gentle on Christmas Day now came down in thin, hard needles. I drove to the county sheriff's annex with Alan beside me, both of us quiet. The heater in my truck pushed warm air toward our hands, but it never reached my chest. I kept seeing my father's torn note in my pocket, the first line still alive, the rest still missing. If this reaches Alex. It felt like a warning that had been interrupted mid-breath. The annex sat behind the main station, a low brick building with a community meeting room attached to it. A paper wreath drooped on the door, and a plastic snowman leaned sideways in the lobby, like someone who had lost the will to stand straight. Holiday decoration in a place built for bad news. It was a small thing, but it made my jaw tighten. I could hear voices inside muffled tents like a storm on the other side of a wall. Deputy Brooks met us at the side entrance. He carried the warrant in a plain folder, his gloves still damp from the snow. He nodded once, and the look in his eyes said this was going to be quick or ugly, maybe both. We walked down the hall together. My boots left wet prints on the tile. Somewhere a radiator rattled and then settled into a low hum. The meeting room was brighter than I wanted it to be. Cold fluorescent light, folding chairs, a long table scarred by years of civic arguments. Greg stood by the far wall, hands in his pockets, shoulders square like he was about to sell a house instead of defend a lie. Linda sat near the table coat, still on arms folded tight, her face pale under the lighting. She looked at me once, a flicker of apology passing through her eyes. Then she lowered them. Two deputies waited near the door, quiet and ready. Brooks opened the folder and placed the warrant on the table. The paper landed with a flat slap that cut the air. Greg's head lifted like he'd been stung. "You went to the sheriff on Christmas week." He said it like a complaint, not a question. His voice tried to stay smooth, but it had a crack running through it. I didn't answer. Alan slid the notary journal across the table, then Samira's written statement, then the forensic notes on the document and the Nevada transfers. Each item hit the wood with its own small sound. Tap, 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 like stones dropping into a well. Greg shook his head slowly, not reading any of it. "You always wanted to catch somebody. That's what you do for a living. You see rot, where there's just family trying to survive." He looked at Linda, as if she was supposed to confirm it. She didn't move. Her eyes stayed on the table. Brooks kept his voice calm. He said the warrant included access to Greg's home safe because there was probable cause that removed estate materials were being kept there. He also said that under Ohio law, a co-owner of the property could consent to opening it. Linda was on the deed. Greg's eyes snapped to her. "Linda." His tone was not a plea. It was a command he had used too many times. She took a breath, the kind that changes a person's life before they even speak. Then she stood. The chair squeaked against the tile, thin and sharp, and in that sound, I heard every quiet compromise she had made across 20 years. "We are not doing this anymore," she said. Greg stepped in front of her, fast blocking her path. His hands were open, but his body was a wall. "We talk at home." Linda's voice didn't rise. It got steadier. "We have talked at home for years." Nothing changed. Brooks moved closer, not threatening, just present. One deputy shifted behind me. The room narrowed the way it does right before a fight that nobody wants but everybody knows is coming. Greg looked around as if searching for a place to hide his anger. When he didn't find one, he turned back to me. "This is your doing?" Something in me finally moved. The pressure of the last 10 days, the missing hours, the fake signature, my father's warning, my mother's unfinished plea, all of it stacked in my throat until I couldn't keep swallowing. "No, Greg," I said. "This is yours. You did this to all of us." My voice didn't shake, but it felt like it came from somewhere deeper than my lungs. Greg stared at me, stunned for a second, like he hadn't expected me to speak in front of strangers. I hadn't expected it either. Brooks said we were going to the house now. He asked Greg to cooperate so the deputies could retrieve what was listed on the warrant. Greg didn't answer. He just walked out first as if leaving on his own terms mattered. We drove in a slow line through the neighborhood. The streets were mostly empty curtains, drawn snow piled high against mailboxes. Christmas lights still blinked on porches, stubborn and cheerful against the cold. Greg's house was dim, except for the tree lights glowing in the living room window. We walked up the steps, the wood creaking under our boots. Greg tried to stop at the door. Brooks held up the warrant. Linda walked past both of them, opened the door, and stepped inside. Warm air rolled out, carrying the smell of pine and leftover ham. The place felt lived and almost peaceful, which made the next part feel even more wrong. We went straight to the home office. The safe sat in the corner behind a framed photo of Mom and Dad from their last anniversary. Seeing that picture there made something hard go through me. Their faces smiling above a metal box full of decisions they never consented to. Brooks asked Linda if she was willing to open it. She nodded once. Her fingers hovered over the keypad. I could see them shaking. 0, 8, 1, 5. The safe beeped, then clicked open. Greg made a sound low in his throat like grief turning into anger. Linda pulled the door wide. The safe was packed tight. Folders, envelopes, a tin box, and a small USB drive taped to the back wall. Brooks started cataloging items, methodical, careful. Alan stood beside him, checking each folder. I stayed a step back, watching my family turn into evidence. Brooks opened the first folder and froze. He passed it to Alan. Alan's eyes widened so slightly I almost missed it. Then he handed it to me. It was my father's will. Not the agreement Greg had shown me. A proper will notarized, clean splitting everything evenly. 50-50. I read the signature twice, as if my eyes were the only thing keeping it real. The paper smelled like old ink and time. The kind of document that had been waiting in the dark for a hand that wasn't Greg's. Behind it was a letter from Dad. I unfolded it slowly. The first line hit like cold water. "If you are seeing this, you have gone too far." I stopped there. I couldn't read the rest yet. My throat went tight, and for a second I felt 16 again, standing in this same room with my father, refusing to raise his voice because he didn't have to. The letter shook in my hand. I lowered it before anyone saw. Brooks took the taped USB from the safe and held it up. He looked at Greg. "What is this?" Greg's face had gone pale. He stared at the drive like it was a snake. "Nothing." Linda spoke quietly from behind him. "It's Dad." Greg turned on her fast. "You don't know that." She held her ground. I saw fear in her eyes, but also something harder, something like relief. Brooks placed the USB in an evidence bag without playing it. He said it would be reviewed formally at the station. Greg's shoulders loosened for half a second, and that told me more than any confession could. He didn't want that drive opened here. Not in front of me. Not in front of Linda. Not in front of the deputies. Alan asked Greg if there were more documents elsewhere. Greg laughed once, short and bitter. "You already got what you came for." Brooks said maybe. Then he asked Greg to come to the station for questioning. Not under arrest right now, but under a legal obligation to cooperate given the estate fraud investigation. Greg looked at the deputies, then at Linda, then at me. His jaw worked, as if he was chewing on words he couldn't swallow. "Fine," he said. His voice was flat. The deputies stayed courteous. No cuffs, no hands on his arms. Just a quiet escort toward the door. At the threshold, Greg stopped. He turned back to me. Anger was there, yes, but it was cut through with something else. Fear. Regret. A look like a man watching his own life slide away and not knowing what to grab first. "I didn't do this because I wanted to hurt you," he said. It wasn't a confession. It was a defense he needed to believe. I needed time. I needed air. I thought I could fix it. He stared at the floor after that, like he couldn't meet my eyes while saying it. I waited for him to say more. About the missing hours. About what Dad meant. About why Mom's voice on that recording sounded terrified. He didn't. The silence after his words felt deeper than anything he could have added. The deputies guided him outside. The porch light flickered once. Snow fell into the doorway in a pale sheet. Linda wrapped her arms around herself, standing in the warm hall, as if the cold had already found her. Brooks looked back at me before leaving. "Alex," he said quietly, "when we review that drive, we may find things you are not ready for. There is also a second item in there I need you to see, but not tonight." He gestured toward the tin box Alan had set aside. A thin envelope lay beneath it, half hidden, its corner ripped like the note I found in Mom's car. My stomach dropped. Brooks didn't open it. He just slid it into another evidence bag and sealed it. "We are taking everything in," he said. "You will be contacted first thing after review." Then he followed Greg out into the snow. The door closed soft, but final. The house went quiet, except for the ticking of Dad's office clock, steady and stubborn, still counting time in a room that had finally stopped lying. Linda sat down slowly on the edge of the couch, in the office, head bowed. I stood there, with Dad's will in my hands, and his letter folded in my pocket, unread, past the first line. There were still pieces missing. The rest of Dad's sentence, the truth on that drive, the envelope Brooks wouldn't show me yet, and the 3 hours I still couldn't remember. Outside, a patrol car door shut. The engine started. Tires rolled over snow. I looked toward the safe, now open and empty, like a mouth that had finally spilled what it was holding, but not all of it. My heart beat slow and hard, each thud matching the clock on the wall. We had opened the door to the truth, but we hadn't stepped through it yet. The courthouse emptied slowly as dusk settled over the parking lot, leaving only the muffled sound of doors closing and the soft crunch of snow beneath tired shoes. I stood just beyond the steps, letting the cold steady my breathing. The wind carried the faint scent of pine from the wreaths hanging along Main Street, and for the first time in weeks, nothing felt like it was closing in on me. It was only quiet. I walked to my car without rushing. The sky fading into a soft navy blue. My hands were still shaking from everything that had unfolded inside, but the tremor had changed. It was no longer fear or adrenaline. It felt like a release, something long overdue. The lights along the courthouse windows glowed warm against the glass, and I watched them for a moment before starting the engine. The drive to the cemetery took only a few minutes. Snow had gathered along the stone path, untouched and pale under the street lamps. I carried the envelope with me, the one that held my parents' true will the paper now softened from how often I had held it these past days. When I reached their graves, the air felt sharper, as if the world had paused to listen. I read their words again, standing in the quiet that always settles between headstones. The will was clear, steady, the kind of fairness they built their lives on. Reading it didn't bring joy, but it brought something steadier. A peace that hurt on its way, in the way cold air burns before it warms you. I stayed there longer than I expected. I spoke softly, not to be heard, only to let the weight lift from my chest. When I finally walked back, I knew what I needed to do. At home, under the kitchen light, I wrote a letter to the court. My hand moved slower than usual, every word chosen carefully. I asked them to consider leniency for Greg if he repaid what he owed and committed to the help he had refused for too long. I didn't excuse him. I didn't erase anything. I only refused to be the one who added more ruin to what was already broken. When the ink dried, I folded the letter and placed it on the table. The house felt different in the quiet that followed, less like a place I had been hiding inside, and more like somewhere I could finally return to. The next morning, Linda stopped by. She kept her coat on as if she wasn't sure how long she could stay. Her voice was soft when she spoke, careful in a way that made me think she had been rehearsing. She said she would separate from Greg, that she wanted the children to grow up with honesty, not fear. She thanked me, though she didn't need to. We stood near the door for a moment, neither of us filling the silence. When she left, she touched my arm gently, a small gesture that said everything words couldn't. Later that afternoon, I found the box with Mom's old Christmas lights in the basement, the same ones I couldn't bring myself to untangle for years. I sat on the living room floor working through the knots while the house settled around me. The bulbs were warm in my hands when they finally lit a soft gold glow reflecting off the window. I draped them along the mantel, stepping back to see how the room changed under their light. It wasn't dramatic, just a gentle warmth spreading through the shadows enough to soften the edges. I pulled out the framed photo that had followed me through every stage of this fight. Mom laughing at something Dad said, Greg standing taller than the rest of us, me holding a mug too big for my hands. I set the photo in its old place, the wood warm from years of sun before everything had fallen apart. It felt right there again. As evening came, I made a simple dinner, something small, something warm, the kind of meal that fills the house with quiet comfort. I ate by the window, watching flakes begin to drift down again, light and slow. For the first time in a long while, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt earned. I sat there until the last bit of daylight faded, listening to the soft hum of the lights behind me. My parents would never know how this season unfolded, how their truths finally rose through all the noise and fear. But I hoped they would understand what I chose to carry forward. Not the anger, not the loss. Only the truth and the space it made for something better. Before heading upstairs, I turned off the kitchen lamp and paused at the doorway. The living room glowed softly with the old lights casting gentle patterns across the floor. I breathed in slow and even, feeling the quiet settle around me in a way that didn't stir old wounds. It was not a perfect ending. It was not meant to be. But it was enough. I closed the door with a light touch, letting the click echo softly through the house, and walked into the warm glow waiting for me.